As we reach the end of April, we're pretty much fully into the tournament season at this point. Right now, Jonesboro is going on, which is one of my favorite tournaments and actually the first pro tournament I've ever watched before. And it's usually a sign that the year is underway and we're going to be playing disc golf quite a bit, pretty much every weekend. Now, if you've ever played in a tournament before and you played a practice round, then you know for sure how much different it is to play in a tournament versus play by yourself or play with your friends. I'm sure the first time you went to a tournament, you were probably a little bit nervous and it was maybe a little bit alarming how really nerve wracking it was to play in a tournament for the first time. I mean, I remember the first time I played in a league, I was on a card with 5 people. It was at a local course I had played very many times and I was literally shaking. I was so nervous. I don't get that nervous anymore, but it's still there. The nerves are there. You got to try and find ways to combat it. Even at the highest level, the best pros in the world, they still get nervous on their first couple putts of the day or just throughout a tournament. It can be pretty frustrating to play practice rounds and shoot really, really well and then go to a tournament and just not shoot anywhere near that good. And I'm going to try and give you my best tips to shoot just as good in your tournament rounds as you do during your practice rounds. So here are my 5 points or tips or whatever to playing better in tournaments. All right, number one, this is going to seem like a no-brainer, but it's really important, is to practice. If you go into a tournament and you haven't played a whole lot going into it, pretty much everything is going to feel a little bit weird. And I know you've probably played a tournament or a round when you haven't played for a while, and I'm going to bet that most of the time you're probably feeling a little bit rusty. You want to try to avoid this going into tournaments. You want to practice as much as you can. If you can, practice the course going into it, but just in general, throw some discs, throw some putts, forehands, backhands, up shots, touch shots, big distance shots, everything that you can do, like dial it in the week leading up to the tournament as much as you can. If I play around Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday before a tournament, not tiring myself out, but just keeping myself familiar with the disc, familiar myself going to the basket, off the tee, I'm guaranteed to play better than if I only play like 1 or 2 rounds leading up to that tournament. I would also say an addendum to this rule is to throw a ton of putts from a comfortable range leading up to a tournament as well, specifically in like the day or 2 days before you're going to play. You want to feel really confident throwing the disc at the basket. When you go to that tournament, you want to have thrown so many discs into a basket and heard those chains ring so many times that you feel like you just can't miss. Because having that in your brain before you play is really important. Just as important as going out and playing practice rounds. All right, number 2, also kind of a no-brainer, I think, for most people, but I still don't do it sometimes, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of other people don't do it. That's to warm up. When you get to a tournament, you should warm up. Not just warm up your putting, not just warm up your throws, warm up your body. Warm up everything you can to make sure that when you play, you are in tip-top shape and aren't going to be rusty in any way. You want from the first shot you throw to the final shot you throw to be as good as it could possibly be in the circumstances. So show up, maybe throw a few putts, get out there, throw pretty much your whole bag, throw a bunch of discs into a net, out into a field, get everything warmed up, your forehand, your backhand. You shouldn't be powering up throughout the tournament. You should be able to throw your max distance, your perfect shots. Everything should be good when you start. You shouldn't feel like your putt's getting warmed up through the tournament. Everything should be good to go from the first throw, the first putt of the tournament. For me, I typically don't throw very good forehands right off the bat, so I'll try and throw a bunch of forehands before a tournament, because if I don't, I'll step up to a tee, I'll have to throw a forehand, and I'll throw it straight into the ground or shank it. And I've done this tons of times in leagues when I haven't warmed up. All right, number 3, and this is probably not only the hardest one to do, but also the hardest one to teach, and that is be confident. Obviously, the warm-up and practice play into this. You're going to be more confident if you're warmed up and you're practiced, but just in general, having that mindset of being confident is also very important. Something you don't want to do during a tournament is think about the mechanics of pretty much anything that you're doing. You've done the practice already, you've done all the reps. All you got to do is go out there and execute on every single shot. If you're thinking about the mechanics of your throw or the mechanics of your putt or anything like that, you're bound to mess them up. Talk to any professional golfer. That's very important not to be thinking about the mechanics of your swing. Recently, I've been reading through this book called Golf is Not a Game of Perfect, and something that's talked about early on in the book is to not think about your swing. A lot of amateur players in golf will maybe have a bad shot or maybe slice their ball a little bit when they don't want to, and they're going to start thinking about the mechanics of their swing throughout the round and try to adjust things while they're playing, and inevitably you're going to play worse. If you've done the practice and you've done everything, all you got to do is tell yourself, hey, I know how to throw. I can trust my swing. I'm just going to go out there and do it. And you're bound to have way more good shots than if you try to fix things in the middle of a tournament. Save the little details and thinking about things and thinking about how you're doing things for the practice rounds, for the film sessions, for the fieldwork sessions. Leave that all out there and don't bring it with you to the tournament. Wait until after the tournament to analyze those things. And going on the list of no-brainers, but this is also another no-brainer, and you've probably heard a million people say it, but I see amateurs fail on doing this all the time, and it is to play smart. If you're running every single putt outside the circle, Most likely you're going to get pretty discouraged because you're going to stress yourself out and start three putting or two putting or whatever, like very often. But if you're bringing in the mindset of laying up when you have to, you're going to just be like, hey, I'm executing my game plan. If I'm 60 feet away and there's a hill and I'm not so sure about it and I lay up and make it, hey, like that's what I wanted to do. I did it. I got my par or whatever I was getting there and I got away from it. If I'm like 60 feet away and there's a hill and I'm like, maybe I could make this, and I run it and miss, and it's like, nah, I gotta make this comeback putt, and maybe I missed that, or maybe I make it. But even if I do make it, I had the same score as before, but I'm stressing myself out. Just, play smart, go through the round, making the right decisions. It's hard to do, but you'll learn how to do it. If it's like super windy and you have to make a long putt, like what are the actual percentages that you're gonna make that putt? Like what, 10, 20%? If it's that low, just lay up, move on to the next hole. You don't have to run everything. Another thing that I think plays into this is don't try and make up for bad shots or bad parts of an earlier round by having really good shots or running putts later on that round. I think it's really rare to be able to fix a bad round by running a bunch of putts. More often, you're just going to end up crumbling and doing even worse by doing that. If you do poorly, you did poorly. Not every round is going to be perfect. Sometimes you're going to have bad rounds. The key is to stick to your game plan and continue doing what you would do had you birdied every single hole leading up to that point. And I think that's a good way to play pretty much every round. Don't worry about what you've done before. Just play your game throughout because you're just going to screw up if you keep trying to do stuff to make up for it. Really, in essence, that entire point is to just play your game. Know what you have to do and don't try to go outside of the box too much. And number 5, this is maybe the most important, especially for amateurs, and that is to not take things too seriously. Something that Paul Ulibarri said on his podcast recently that he said Ken Climo told him one time is he was getting like headaches at the end of his rounds and was wondering why he was, having these migraines at the end of rounds all the time. And he asked him, like, are you dialed in from the minute you get to the course to the minute you step off? And he's like, yeah, I'm like super dialed in the whole time. And he goes, you're doing it wrong. You have 30 seconds to take your shot, get dialed in for that moment, take your shot, and then relax. And I think this goes for pretty much anyone, and you could see Ken Climo's pretty much the GOAT, and he goes by this mindset as well, so I think you should too. You don't want to have to go through 3, 4, 5 hours of heavy concentration, or multiple of those in a day if you're playing more than one round. You just want to have to concentrate when you have to, and then don't worry about it for the rest of the tournament. Throw your shot, take your 30 seconds. If you miss it or you mess up, whatever, just start chatting about something else. Talk about fantasy football, talk about sports, talk about the last movie that you saw or TV show. Don't try and talk about disc golf throughout the entire round. Like, be dialed in when you have to, but just relax, chill out, and have some fun. I guarantee you'll play better if you have that mindset. Like I said before, you're going to mess up shots. Allow that to happen. Don't stress about it. Find other things to talk or think about throughout the round. Chat with your card mates. Just try to play it cool and have fun. I think if you see someone who plays a really good round, you're not often going to see they're super dialed in and super serious the entire time. A lot of times when I've seen someone shoot really, really well, they are usually pretty chill and having fun and talking the entire time because that is how you have to shoot well. You don't want to have to think about it too much. You think for the time you have to throw, and then you get away from it, and you keep doing that for the whole tournament. Now, these are all things that I'm still working on doing myself. I don't think you're going to be able to follow all of them right away. You're not going to watch this video and then be able to go out there and play super smart and warm up perfectly and do all of these things. Obviously, it's going to take some time to really dial in all of these points, but the point is to know that you should do them and figure out how you can do it in a way that works best for you and do it consistently so you can play better at tournaments. You have to give yourself room and time to get better at these things, and just as you do it more, and if you keep these in mind, you're just going to slowly see yourself improve, and you're going to get better and better at thinking about these things until all 5 of these points become second nature to you and you're shredding tournaments left and right. So I have a tournament tomorrow, so I'm actually going to get outside and do some practice putting and practice what I preach a little bit. Maybe you should do the same if you have the chance, but just keep these things in mind. I hope you guys do well at your tournaments, and I'll see you next time. Peace.